Ani, Sego, Tanse, what the cup? Hello. When I tell people I'm an Indigenous chef, they often ask me what Indigenous people ate here long ago. What was their diet? I explained there was no single diet amongst them, since Indigenous people traditionally lived in the North, Central, and South America, as well as the Caribbean, and each of these regions naturally provided different types of food sources. As you can see from this map of North and Central America, there are noticeable differences in the land from one region to another. The brown areas represent the areas of the highest elevation mountains. The nations living in those regions relied upon the resources that mountain regions provide. My people, the interior Salish of southern BC, are mountain people, and they hunted deer, elk, moose, caribou, pronghorn, and mountain goat when times were tough. But they also relied on rabbit and other small game and salmon in a big way. The nations living in the coastal regions, shown in dark green on the map, relied upon fish, seafood, sea vegetables, marine life. The areas shown in yellow provided a range of food sources, everything from fish to small game to large game, including buffalo on the plains. There are a number of specific plant foods that I'd like to highlight, but the first is wild rice. Wild rice is actually a grass and is normally found in marshy areas, especially in the Great Lakes region, further to the west in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and up to northern Saskatchewan as well. Harvesting was traditionally done in canoes, using a stick to knock the kernels loose from the stalks so they would fall in the canoe. From there they would collect it, dry it in the sun, smoke it over an open fire to dry it out, and then it would be hulled and winnowed to separate the kernels from the chaff. All that before storing or cooking it. Research has shown wild rice is a powerful antioxidant and characteristic of being an anti-inflammatory. Red Lake Nation is the only American Indian tribe that grows and harvests their own wild rice. They have expanded their line of offerings to include jams, jellies, and syrups. In fact, many indigenous nations developed settlements and began farming in Central and South America at least 5,000 years ago. If those sweet potatoes were spread throughout, they provide vitamin A and vitamin C and are recognized as a superfood. Corn, tomatoes, squash, and sunflowers were only some of the foods that they cultivated. Sunflowers were used in a number of ways. Seeds were ground and used as flour to make breads and cakes. Dry stalks were used as building materials, and there were also various non-food sources of sunflowers in textiles. The avocado grew wild in Mexico over 10,000 years ago and was farmed by the Aztecs as a delicacy and an aphrodisiac some 5,000 years later. The Incans of Peru used peanuts as sacrificial offerings and entombed them with their mummies to aid them in their spiritual journey as early as 1500 BC. Other indigenous nations in Brazil ground peanuts to mix with maize to make a drink. Peanuts are high in protein and require a high level of food safety. Today, U.S. peanuts are considered a superfood. The Hopi, Navajo, Pueblo, and Cherokee cultivated blue corn, grinding into a meal and making tiki bread. On a side note, blue corn may become a thing of the past, however, since it is very difficult to cultivate and there are very few who are still willing to dedicate themselves to growing it. The Mandan, Uighura, and Hidatsa were traditional expert farmers in Missouri, North Dakota, and Manitoba, and the Blackfoot cultivated tobacco in Saskatchewan. And of course, the Haudenosaunee people who traditionally lived among the St. Lawrence of the upper New York State, Ontario, and Quebec became expert farmers in the three sister companion plants, corn, beans, and squash. Beans are native to North and Central America. They are nutrient dense, rich in protein, and an excellent source of dietary fiber, folate, manganese, and potassium. And they are very high protein as well. Today, the Yucca Dihi Winton Nation provides olive oil specialty products from Northern California under the brand Sika Hills. They have a sustainable and growing practice. Over 1,200 acres of land are in a conservation easement, and the tribe's certified organic fields are irrigated with a high-efficiency underground drip system. Indigenous foods of the Americas now make up 60% of the world's crops. But no conversation about indigenous food is complete without making mention of berries. The strawberry is one of the first fruits discovered by Native Americans and First Nations, and it's considered to be quite special. Some tribes recognize June as Strawberry Moon Month, as this is the time when the strawberry ripens. California is responsible for 90% of the U.S. production of strawberries. They are sold under Driscoll's and other U.S. brands. Blueberries are also indigenous to North America. Native Americans and First Nations influenced the commercial development of strawberries through their production methods. If you care to use blueberries, look for Driscoll and other U.S. brands. Chokecherries and cranberries are also native to the Americas. These plants do not require cultivating since they grow wild in abundance. Indigenous people highly regarded these little nuggets of sweetness. One historically famous dish is pemmican, which is a traveler's food, made of drying and grinding large game meat with animal fat and berries such as these into a heavy paste. These are but a few of the many foods that indigenous people traditionally consumed and which have very long histories and traditions.